Hello, folks, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing with me, Jonny McFarlane. And today I'm joined by Mr. Stevie Clifford, live from Wales. Welcome, Stevie.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, mate. Yeah, I'm in a place called Presthaven, which is a holiday park kind of caravan area. So just down with the kids. Mrs. books these wild and adventurous places to go and take the kids. So this is where I find myself. I'm supposed to be off this week.
Stevie, it's the only time that I can imagine the phrase "down with the kids" is ever used in relation to you.
Yeah, something like that. I just do as I'm told. I'm swimming in all sorts today, Jonny, so I'm sure everybody will know how much I'll enjoy that.
Thank you very much for joining me, mate. Listen, before we get stuck into the meaty topics of the day, a wee word for our sponsors. The morning briefing is brought to you by MPH Group, Scotland's award-winning family-run all-trades specialist covering all of mainland Scotland. For automatically enters you into MPH's incredible holiday giveaway. You could win a 5-night stay at the luxurious 5-star Moon Palace Resort in Cancun, Mexico. So get involved. If you've got any jobs needing doing, the MPH Group, they're your blokes and, well, men and women. Let me just say that, Stevie. So let's get stuck in. Where do we start? Where else to start but Philippe Clement and his unveiling at Ibrox today? Stevie, he spoke to Sky yesterday. We got a bit more of an impression of the man. We'd obviously heard him talk to Rangers TV. It's one thing talking to club media, and it's another going to talk to the media itself, because obviously the questions are a little bit tougher. What did you make of that interview between Mr. Clement and Sky?
It's all pretty straightforward, I think. I don't think there was much to it. I mean, I'm really interested to find out about his kind of philosophy and you know, how he's going to play, how long it's maybe going to take, that kind of thing. And these are all answers we probably are not going to get in a press conference, Jonny. You know, these are answers that we're going to get when we start seeing it on the field. So, you know, there's a little bit of a impatience in terms of, like, I want to hear and see things, but it's never going to give away a lot. Is it really? It was interesting though that when he talked about he's turned down a lot more money, you know, in other job offers, because he feels that this is the most attractive one, and he's watched every single game we played in. So he's clearly crazy in some level if he's watched all the games and turned down 15 odd million from Saudi stuff and is still choosing to come to Govan. So it's certainly an interesting appointment in terms of that side of it. When he speaks a lot, obviously, about building from the back and wanting to play attacking front foot football, that's all what we like to hear. That's what I'm looking for, and I think we all want to be entertained. I think that's really fair, given what we've maybe not had in the last couple of years. Maybe at times we have, but not a sustained period. So it's interesting as well. He talks about focusing on ourselves and just kind of blocking everything else out and getting that, you know, when he talked about it not being a marathon.
Yeah.
And just, you know, not concentrating on the guy in front, just getting ourselves into a rhythm. That's really important, and that's true as well, because we really do need that, Jonny. You know, we really do need to just concentrate one game at a time and then figure out, you know, where we are as a team. He's got a lot of stuff to figure out in terms of, you know, this squad individually, who's just down on form and who's capable of being a lot better, or who is, you know, who's the tough decisions to make behind. So, you know, it's always interesting. There's a lot of intrigue behind anybody new coming into a club, but when it's a manager, it's always double. But I'm looking forward to obviously seeing the press conference today. I'm disappointed that I'm not going to be there, because the Blue Room, you know, unveiling's always a really sort of gravitas experience, isn't it? So disappointed I'm not going to make that today, but I'll look on with interest. There certainly should be a lot of questions. I'm sure he'll be asked about finances and things today as well, Jonny, because I'm almost certain that he's not coming in without promise of backing, and we're going to need some money in that transfer window. So I'm interested to see how he handles those questions.
First of all, before we get any further, Alistair Wilkie has gifted 4 Rangers Review memberships. That's for the YouTube channel. Thanks very much for that, Alistair. That's terrific. Lots of people taking you up on that. So absolutely brilliant, mate. Thanks for doing that. Listen, Stevie, one of the things that he said that actually really grabbed me was this. He was asked about the players' confidence and whether or not the job needs big changes or small tweaks. And he said, I think if you make big changes directly, then you make people more nervous than they are already. You need to do it step by step. If you want to implement all my philosophies of football in 5 days, then it's impossible. Not here and also not in the other clubs before. But in the end, it's always the result of a strong team scoring a lot of goals and playing attractive, dominant football, the things people want to see here. Now, what I like about that, Stevie, is that we've seen managers before come in and adopt an approach that is kind of non-negotiable. We're moving and reverting to my philosophy. The fundamental truth is about Rangers is you need to win game by game. If Philippe Clement loses the next 10 games, he's going to be under serious pressure in 10 games' time. You need to win every match. There's no way as a Rangers manager can say, well, this season's been written off, we're looking to the future. It's just the way the club is. So I like the fact that he's basically talking about a slow and steady progression towards his ideas, not making the players uncomfortable, but trying to get them to win. Because he both will need to change this squad and these players and win at the same time. So it's a difficult balance for a manager coming in at this point of the season with the transfer window 2.5 months away, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, but it also gives him I spoke a wee bit about this with Joshua. It gives him an opportunity, Jonny, I think, which is quite a nice one, where he can properly evaluate, because there's some tough fixtures coming up, not only in Europe but at home. We go away from home to more or less all the key kind of top 6 places within the next 10 weeks or so before that window opens, culminating in Celtic Park in the final game of the year. So he's got a real opportunity to figure out exactly what's needed. What he's going to hear a lot, he'll be told a lot, and he's going to obviously take that on board when he's making his own opinions. But there's a little bit of patience required with us with regard to that, because he's not, as you just pointed out there, and as he said from his comments, it's not like he can come in and suddenly make 7 changes to this team. Yeah. 1, we don't have the personnel. 2, most of them are injured. And 3, I'm not sure we have the quality. So he's going to have to basically cut through the weeds and figure out where this squad actually is. Because it's a big question, it's worth a debate. Is this squad really as bad as they're showing? Or was it down to tactics? Was the message getting mixed? Was the group so kind of disconnected that it just wasn't clicking? Or do we have real serious issues with the quality in terms of, the actual capabilities of this squad? So
what's your feeling, Stevie? What's your feeling on that question? That is an important question.
Yeah, it's a big question, isn't it? I genuinely don't think the recruitment in the summer is as bad as it's shown, but I do think that a couple of them, like maybe Sam Lammers and Cyril Dessers, have got a long way back before they convince the support that they're capable of anything. And once you get in that position, that's really difficult. But I still think, obviously, Jack Butland, and then you've got the likes of Balogun, Sterling, Kieran Dowell, who will make an impression, and they'll do fine as what we think they might be. And then you got the Cifuentes, Danilo, etc. I think you can get more out of these boys. Now, on the existing squad, the big questions are whether or not is James Tavernier, Connor Goldson, John Lundstrom, Borna Barisic, Ryan Jack, are they going through a bad spell in terms of performance? Are they capable of lifting that? We look at James Tavernier at St Mirren. He's capable of those wonderful moments, isn't he? Like, you wouldn't write him off of doing that at any point. But the thing is, we've seen him being exploited so many times this season already in defensive, and it looks like he's maybe lost a step. Does it look like that because the whole squad's playing badly, or does it look like that because it's a season too many? These are questions that he's going to have to figure out pretty quickly. The centre-back area, Ben Davies came in and probably looked as confident as any, and then has a nightmare couple of games. John Suter comes in, he's made a lot of mistakes this season. Connor Goldson, who is fairly reliable, made a lot of mistakes this season. So there's big things like that we need to figure out exactly where it is. And then, Jonny, can he get the best out of the likes of Danilo, Raskin, Cantwell, the younger ones that we maybe think have got promise. Is Sima capable of upping his game? He's capable of finishing really well. He's done well so far. Not a criticism, but can he add more to his game? Is Matondo's redemption arc simply because he was the only attacker in a poor side kind of thing? And there's lots of questions for him to figure out. I think this squad's a right conundrum at this moment, Jonny, in terms of it's not easy to come in and say, well, you've got 7 there that are very easy to kind of base it round. There's a lot of questions regarding whether or not, where exactly is the squad individually and collectively? What does he need to do in January immediately? Because as you said, he pointed out, you can't do it in one full swoop. So what's the most urgent positions? So we spoke a lot about, reigniting this front line. Does it really look like that's worked? I'm not sure it has. I'm not sure there's enough width in there. Danilo is possibly the only one that looks like he might have a real future. So is there a capability of saving Dessers? Can Lammers play in a position that he can really thrive and get the best of him? Then these are all massive questions. It was interesting, that graph you highlighted last night that comes, I think, the Hearts standard. The boy had done that, and it said Rangers the most possession outside the box. And what have we spoke about all season? It's almost like a false kind of thing that Rangers are doing, where the ball gets put around their defence so much, and then the midfield deep, like Lundstrom, maybe take it, and he passes around that defensive bit, or Ryan Jack, or whoever it is, and they pass around that, but the passing's got no real meaning, it's got no real purpose. So these are all things that he needs to inject. And how slow have Rangers been all season? Is that a problem with the personnel, Jonny? Is it a problem with the tactics? We're going to figure all this out, because Clement is a pretty forward-footing guy in terms of how he plays the game. It might be slow and kind of methodical up to a point, but when he gets into the opposition's half, it's all pretty gung-ho and attacking football from what I've read and what he likes to do. So it's going to be interesting whether or not he has the personnel. My own gut feeling, Jonny, now that I've kind of went round the houses and tried to dodge the question, my own gut feeling is that this squad has around 4 or 5, and I'm talking about the likes of Raskin, likes of Cantwell, likes of Danilo, Butland, that you can base it around.
Yeah.
Then there's real questions over everybody else. And I'm sorry if people don't like this, but I think that the senior players in that squad, when you look at likes of Goldson, likes of Barisic, likes of Tavernier, likes of Lundstrom, likes of Jack, I think there's huge questions of whether or not they're going to be able to survive another manager, and should survive another manager. So these are big question marks surrounding that, and I've got my doubts of whether or not they're capable.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, Stevie, and I was going to actually put that to you. Is there a case here for Philippe Clement to take a scalp early doors, absolutely ruthlessly, in the sort of Graham Souness mould, and lay down a marker? Now, I'm not saying end a player's career, but maybe give that impression for a couple of weeks. One of the big chiefs in the dressing room just basically take someone down, I don't know if it means changing the captaincy. I don't know if it means dropping a Connor Goldson completely and bringing in Liam Balakin or Leon King, for example. But just make a sort of statement that says to the fans, this chapter is over and a new one has begun, and everyone will be treated as if it's a clean slate. And anyone who wants to be part of my era going forward has to earn it from me. I just kind of feel like that might give him even a little bit more leeway, almost a little bit more understanding that things are on the up, are going to change. Because Stevie, I don't know if you've felt this. Doing this role, I speak to a lot of Rangers fans, and I know you speak to Rangers fans every day. I don't think there's been as much excitement about this appointment as there has been about previous ones. I think that's a once-bitten, type shy situation. And I think that's especially true when you look at the guy's CV, because the guy has got a fantastic CV. Rangers fans should be excited. So does he need to do something like that, just to capture and refocus minds from the start?
Interesting, because it's a really big thing to do if he comes in and does that, and it's probably what we're all calling for and what I've actually been discussing. But if he comes in and does that, and it goes wrong, then immediately he's got a target on his back in the eyes of some. So
Yeah.
it's a really big one. It's probably one that he has to evaluate properly. We all talk about dropping James Tavernier and what he doesn't give, and say for example he did decide it was him. Look at what we're losing out at the other end.
Yeah.
So there needs to be that kind of realism there as well. And I've been one that spoke about doing that in the long term. So I understand the ramifications of that. If he drops a Lundstrom or a Barisic, I don't think it's the same kind of decision. The only two that he can do that with, Jonny, in my opinion, to send that really big message, is James Tavernier or Connor Goldson. They're the two biggest ones. And if you do it with Tavernier, then you're risking not getting what we get on the other side in a team that's not really giving a lot. So understand that. Connor Goldson, would you like to see John Souttar at the back with Ben Davies, for example? Would that work? I'm not so sure. Look what happened when Connor Goldson went out. So as much as they're an issue and as much as I'm calling for that to happen, he would probably give himself a big issue right at the very, very start by dropping one of those two. In the long term, I think it's a strategy we need to look at to figure out. And this is a big question. This is what I'm talking about. Are they not performing because of the team and those around them? Are they not performing because it's a season too many? Are they not performing because of tactics and things like that? So he'll need to figure all this out. I'm not sure whether he can make a massive statement immediately like that, and besides the fact,
what about the captaincy, Stevie? Because any new manager coming in has a blank slate with the captaincy. It's not the same as what Dick Advocat did with Lorenzo Amoruso and Barry Ferguson, where Lorenzo had been the captain and was stripped of the captaincy. A manager, when he comes in, has the grace to say, well, listen, what was before was what was before. And I'm the new guy, and that was a different appointment, and I'd rather have a Jack Butland, or I'd rather have a John Souttar, or whatever it is, whatever that decision is. Is that, maybe, given what you've said, a more realistic option for him? Or is that, to use the sort of football manager situation, is that a bit of a roll of the dice too far? Are you potentially upsetting the dressing room with a lot of players who actually maybe like the captain or like the leadership style that Tav has?
Well, if you do that, I think it's fair to say you're ending Tav's Rangers career. It might not happen at this moment in time, but you're effectively telling him that further down the line that he's going to be shipped and moved on. So I think that's a massive decision to be made. Who's your options? John Souttar. So is he going to start every week? Jack Butland's the key one. And I think the problem we've got is at the moment is that there's so much anger at this squad and at the management previously and the board, and it's a scattergun kind of aggression at the moment. We've seen how toxic it was after the last game at home to Aberdeen. We've seen that. I think the players have largely escaped. I've said that before, of a horror show in Europe out in Cyprus. So they've got away with that a wee bit. They got away with the performance at St Mirren, which, although was a good result, wasn't a good performance.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering just where this squad is. Like, that's the biggest question for me. And I don't see him, especially given what he said, I don't see him. He'll be asked about the captaincy today. I don't think he makes that change. But I think in the long run, if we're being really honest, and if I'm being really honest with myself, I do think that the senior group we have an issue with. And it's about him figuring out just who exactly might be able to stay and who's ran the race. So these are big questions for him. I wouldn't change the captaincy. I really wouldn't. Not at this moment in time. I don't think there's anything to gain by that. And would I in the future and maybe the summer make that fresh change and move them on? Then yeah. I mean, at this moment, yes. But what happens if there's an upturn in form in James Tavernier in the next 2 months' time, where he suddenly finds his legs and it wasn't him, it was what had went on before? What happens if Connor Goldson in a better structured team starts to perform again?
Yeah.
Is there a risk that in 6 months' time they kind of do the same things form-wise that they've done to other managers? These are all things that Clement's going to need to figure out, and they are. Unfortunately for us, these are big questions. They're kind of unavoidable, Jonny. And and it's so difficult because, James Tavernier's been at Rangers, 9 years, Connor Goldson, 5 years, I think he's been there now, 6 years maybe, and they've become kind of a mainstay. So these are the two biggest questions for me. Lundstrom and Barisic are going out of contract, so you can probably, if you were to drop them, it wouldn't create such a wave that one of them two are. So there's your biggest questions. You're not going to do something crazy like drop Jack Butland, are you? So
No.
That would be kind of unthinkable. So the only two that he's going to drop that are really going to send those kind of short waves out would be the captain and the assistant captain. So I'm not sure he does it short term, at least. And I think that perhaps they deserve an opportunity. And it maybe goes against what I've said already, but I can't help but thinking, let's figure out how much has went on before that's really contributed to the position they're in before we make any radical decisions. And that's why the next 10 weeks is an ideal opportunity for Clement to see exactly up close what this squad is really like. Is it as damaged as we think, or is it, down to other things that caused them to be playing as such? And I hope that's making sense, because it's a difficult question, Jonny. It's not like you can just come out and say, drop everybody, because we can't do that.
No,
so
Stevie,
how do you
100%.
get the best? So how do we figure that out?
It's difficult because we don't even have complete information on the 9 players that have come in. We've hardly seen Kieran Dowell. We've not seen Dujon Sterling. Danilo's been pretty much injured ever since he was fully fit. So those players, we just genuinely don't know what they can deliver. We'll know by the end of the season. We might know by January, but you might get a new manager that comes in. I know this is is an extreme example, but Dick Advocaat came in, no impressions of Scottish football, no influences from Scottish football, and looked at the youth team and said, that kid there is our main man. He's a linchpin. Now, I don't think that there's anyone who's that good like Barry Ferguson was under Dick Advocaat, but someone like Clement, it is a clean slate. He might see things that we don't see because we're kind of influenced by what's gone before. He might say, right, I'm playing Dujon Sterling at right back and James Tavernier is going to get moved further forward. He might do just stuff that we would not consider because he's coming at it completely blank and these things might work. So there's loads of stuff to consider and to discuss and to think about, Stevie. And I think it's going to be fascinating to see how he goes about it. It seems to me from that interview with Rangers TV and Sky, we're moving back to someone who's probably going to be a little bit more guarded in his press dealings. One thing I loved about Michael Beale, you got all the information. There was no doubt you knew where you stood with him. You knew what the situation was. I feel like with Philippe Clement there's already kind of that touch of the I'm not going to quite give everything away. And I think that'll probably help him in the long term. I think Michael Beale ended up getting hoisted by his own petard almost because everything that he said was then picked apart and analysed by people like us. It has to be said. And then when he contradicted himself later, it was brought back. Now, listen, I'm saying that I still think Michael Beale's going to go in and have a good career and as a good coach. It's not worked out for him. But with Clement there, you can already see, I think, a little bit more of a clipped media style that in this maelstrom that is Glasgow will probably serve him well.
Yeah, I think Gio was a wee bit like that, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And I
Gio
think,
was a lovely guy, but dull as dishwater in press conferences, let's be honest.
Yeah, he was. It was funny because he was completely different away from it as well. And even, looking back on it, I said this at the time as well, we gave Gio quite a rough ride towards the end of it because there was difficult questions that needed it. Michael Beale maybe escaped that somewhat because Gio had more of a sustained period, whereas Beale, was over very quickly for him. So he avoided that real scrutiny. Only at times, maybe after the Celtic game, was he held properly to account. So he avoided that somewhat. But Gio was different. He didn't give a lot away. Frustrating when it came to injuries and things, but you've seen when Michael Beale, when he said a lot, didn't really favour him. So yeah, I would agree with you. I think he's probably just more savvy, Jonny. I think, Michael Beale was an open book and that didn't really help him. So it'll be interesting to see how Clement handles it. But what I would say, Jonny, is let me fire that question back to you that
Mhm.
you asked me. If you were Clement in this position, would you go in and make a signature decision? Would you go in and strip captaincy? Would you look to dump any of the bigger players? Is there anything that I'm saying, or maybe the wider fan base is saying with regards to the more established older players that makes sense? Is there questions to be asked? So let's fire that back to you, because it's a conundrum. I think it's a really difficult one.
Yeah, no, listen, I wouldn't touch the captaincy. I wouldn't touch Tavernier or Goldson. I totally agree with you, Stevie. I think if you did that, you have potential for unrest in the dressing room that would
Would you do it in the long term?
Yeah, because I think you have to think about it in the long term, because Tavernier's 32. Connor Goldson's fine. And I know, listen, every time I say this, I cause people to go mad in the comments. So I don't think Connor Goldson's at the heart of Rangers' problems. He's one of the last players I think you would sort. He's not been good this season, no doubt about it. But I'm talking about over the long term at the club. I think he's been pretty solid. But Tavernier has been, I think, off the pace in terms of his form. It's especially defensively this season. Now, if he was on here, Stevie, he might say, well, I can only do so much in terms of what I can do. There's a team structure issue that's affecting everyone who has been good. He might say, I'm still scoring goals at a pretty reasonable rate. He'd say, I'm still producing the big moments. Look at the game against St Mirren when he pings an absolute pressure penalty into the corner, and then later on in the game with a great strike as well. So I get all that, but you have to be looking ahead with someone like Tavernier. There's just no way he can continue to be that Iron Man who plays 60 games a season and is scoring 20 goals from right back indefinitely. You know, the man is human. He is not an alien. And Rangers have to be thinking about how to replace those goals and that creativity from the right. There's no doubt in my mind. But for just now, I don't think it would be a wise idea going in with the machine gun, as much as there might be a temptation. And I think the argument, Stevie, for me would be more about the captaincy. Would it be a smart move to switch out Tavernier for say, Jack Butland? I think if he's going to make decisions like that, it might be in midfield with someone like Lundstrom. We might see less of Lundstrom because of that turning that he has. You know, he's not a natural at taking the ball and turning and driving forwards. He's more likely to sort of take the ball and play it back. I think we all know that John Lundstrom, when he's at his top of his form, when he's firing, when it's a 50-50 battle in the Europa League, John Lundstrom is a very good player. He's shown that in the Europa League run, and there's a reason why he had his own song and why people were so in love with him for that period. But if we're talking about the day-to-day and the Scottish Premiership, I can see that being an area where maybe Clement makes a change. I can also see Borna Barisic being someone that gets less game time when you've got Ridvan Yilmaz there, someone who is clearly capable, but has had his injury problems. If he can be kept fit, that's a big if. But if he can be kept fit, then I can see him being able to make that position his own. If he's not, Stevie, if he's not able to remain fit for this new manager, that'll be 2 years with no impact, and that would be really, really disappointing for the money that's been put into that player. So that's one that I think has to be. We have to see something from him this season. But there's no doubt in my mind that Clement's got a massively difficult job. This squad has been put together for a formation that doesn't work, the diamond formation. It's just not worked in terms of the day-to-day bread and butter. I'd like to see Rangers to go 3 at the back and sort of build up in a 3-1-4-2. I think getting 2 strikers into the box for Rangers is a must. They must find a way to do that in the majority of the Scottish Premiership games. And having 3 at the back would allow you to do that and give you a little bit of comfort as well, that there was 3 guys back there to deal with counter-attacks. If you've got John Souttar in that team, we know he's capable of a brain fart, Stevie. We know he's capable of a big mistake, but he's also brilliant at driving forward with the ball and breaking lines and causing disruption from the back. So in a back 3, that's perfect for him. Others in the team would have to adapt. Connor Goldson, Ben Davies, I think probably suits a back three more than a back two. You've got Leon Balogun who can slot in there as well. So for me, I like that, and I know that that's been something that Clement's done in the past. I think that would be quite a radical change. When was the last time we saw three at the back at Rangers, going back to Walter Smith era? I think Advocat used it for a. I remember Advocat playing Kanchelskis at right wing back and Neil McCann at left wing back for a time, which was pretty radical. If you had that kind of quality on the wing, then and the confidence and the quality general in the squad that you could cope with such an attacking formation, then that would be something to see. But I don't think that's the case right now. But I think three at the back is something that can work. I know there's other people who will be shaking their head, like Adam, for example. Adam Thornton really isn't a fan of three at the back and isn't a fan of the idea of Rangers playing that formation because he thinks it'll be too stale in terms of domestic football and getting men forward. I don't know what your thoughts are.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because there's an argument Ben Davies happily could slot into the three on the left side and be quite comfortable. John Souttar, as you could say, if he plays in the middle, then is really comfortable there, breaking forward especially. But, I think you can do a lot with the defence and switch up whatever way you want. But the biggest issue for me that Clement's going to get really early is how does he inject a tempo into this team? And that's a big issue because everything's so slow. Yeah. Nico Raskin and Todd Cantwell can provide that energy from the middle, but how do you fit them into a system that works? Because arguably Todd Cantwell's a 10. He's not really an 8, and if you play him as an 8, he takes a lot away from that. Would he thrive as an 8 in our system? That's interesting. I think Raskin is better as an 8 because as a 6, I'm not sure that his passing's quite on point as it should be. John Lundstrom and Ryan Jack are your 6s in the squad, but they've not performed in the slightest. Kieran Dill's a naturally left-sided one that we've not had, and he'll provide that drive and stuff, but is he really as good tracking back? So there's loads of questions. Up front, you don't have a lot. Like Sam Lammers, if you play him as a 10, you're taking Cantwell out of that position. Cantwell's
Stevie, let me just see on Sam Lammers. See on Sam Lammers. Let's see him as a 9.
Interesting, because I was going to comment on that, Jonny, actually, because don't you think that Sam Lammers, when he does his wee pirouettes and his turns and everything else, he's always 50 yards from goal, and it doesn't affect anything. Wonder if he plays up front in a situation where he's better, just to kind of, in the better positions to influence the game. Would he work? Would Dessers work purely as a target man, where he's just concentrating on playing around the box?
Yeah.
Because we have to try and get something out of these guys. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does. Would Dessers, like Danilo playing as a 10 off the 9, not out wide, but like as a second striker, probably up there playing off him. Yeah. Would that work? Would it help him? There's loads of questions. The thing is, as much as we're kind of lamenting this squad, or maybe I am, and saying about tempo and stuff like that, there's lots of things you can try. There's lots of conundrums that you can mess about with and see what works. And he'll obviously take direction from, Stephen Davis, Alex Ray, and things like that, while he figures out who's going to come in from the kind of Rangers side and partners him in that. So, yeah, I think it's interesting. The problem is that there might be loads of things you can do, but is there loads of things you can do that are actually going to work and get anything out of this squad? That's maybe the bigger question. Is Zach Lovelace, Ross McCausland viable options from the youth team that might save us a transfer or two? Because if he plays with, like he does, and focuses on that attack, I wonder if these young boys are really capable of doing it. You know what I mean? Zach Lovelace, we've seen a wee bit of it. Paisley, could he do it more permanently? Is that an option? He was playing first team football at Millwall, Jonny. So could he play, a vibrant part in the squad? There's all wee interesting kind of conundrums everywhere, I think. That's why I think that this squad, and I've used it already in a show, I think it is a conundrum. There's so many questions regarding not individually but collectively. What can we do? How can we fix this? I'm not sure you can fix it completely. So how do you get the best out of it until we bring more in? Who do you need to ship out immediately? There's so much, and it'll give us so much to discuss. It's not going to be boring. I think that's the thing. There's going to be an excitement of what he does. As you said, he's got a blank canvas. So all of a sudden, he's not got loyalties to anybody. It doesn't matter to him that James Tavernier's been here 9 years. It doesn't matter to him that John Lundstrom had a good European run. It doesn't matter that Borna Barisic has got all these assists. So it's going to be interesting. If he treats it as a here and now kind of thing, then, the players are really all playing for their futures. So it's interesting. Definitely one to watch in terms of what he's doing. But today, going to be interesting to see what he says about, his philosophy. I'd like to hear a wee bit more on that. What has he been promised money? I'm sure he'll talk about that. He'll touch on the captaincy. Somebody will ask him on the captaincy. I'm pretty sure people will ask him on the shape, formation. They're going to ask him, what he's seen from our games so far. What does he think we need to fix? And will he change the shape? These are all questions, that I would like to be in a position to ask. So, obviously we'll get a chance to speak to him at the weekend, Jonny, after Hibs, and maybe in the presser before that as well. So there's big questions, and look, Hibs are kind of upturned to form as well, and they're probably coming to Ibrox at a good time for them. Montgomery seems to have steadied the ship, and they've still got a decent squad. They're capable guys like Johan, so it's a difficult first test immediately for them, but it's a good one because we'll get a chance to see how these players respond. And there's just so much. There's so many questions, and there'll probably be a lot of people out there thinking we need to be ruthless and we need to make these big decisions and make these changes. I'm not entirely against that, Jonny. I don't want to come across as I'm not. I just don't think we can do it right now. We've got such a massive 10 weeks ahead, which involves a League Cup and Europe, that we have to try and win and progress in. The league is more or less 0 lives left, if we've even got that, because 7 may as well be 30 in Scotland at times. So it's not like he can come in and make all those changes and rip it up unless you're effectively saying, well, we don't have anything to compete with in this league. So get really interesting. Longer term, he can maybe make those big decisions and rip more up. But short term, I'm not sure we can. So it's all to watch for me, Jonny. It's exciting that way. It's all to watch and figure out exactly what this guy is going to do and how he's going to change it. And let's be honest, I don't know a lot about him. All I know about Philippe Clement is that what I've learned in this last week and what I've read and what I've seen, probably similar to lots of other people. So, certainly going to get behind him. It's an intriguing one. I've said that already this week. It's an intriguing one. And I'm certainly interested to see how this is all going to pan out and how he handles those really big questions.
A lot of comments coming in from what I said about Lammers' potential as a number 9 there, and also just generally about these new signings. I'm going to read this one from Eddie McFeet. He said, do you honestly think Dessers is good enough on what he's shown? For me, he's nowhere near good enough. Now,
I would agree with Eddie, completely. But
so would I, Stevie.
Sorry, but this is the issue.
Yeah.
See, if you just dump this guy, how do we get rid of him? There's never ever going to be a team that will come in and say, well, you paid 4, we'll give you 4. It's not going to happen. So we're going to have to try and figure out a way to maximise this guy. So could he be a target man 9 and just, maybe a goal will change it for him confidence-wise when he starts banging him in. I don't think he's got the legs to be a pressing forward where, he plays that one up front. I think he needs somebody around him that potentially is going to do that work so that he can finish. Can he finish? Well, on evidence, people will be shouting at the telly saying, Stevie, have you been blind to his finishes? I haven't been. He's missed a lot of chances. But he's capable of going through patches in his career where, always hark back onto the Ronald de Boer thing when he signed and he said, at times this guy will look like the worst player in the world, but when he flourishes, he flourishes. So you've got that to potentially go back on as well. But we have to try and get something out of him. What happens if Clement gets him and then says, you're not part of this? We've then got a base to at least try and shift him on. So I would agree with Eddie. I think that's a completely fair comment. And if somebody else come on and said about Lammers, I think that's a completely fair comment as well. But we still have to try and do something with them in order to either move them on or salvage something of their careers here. So, as I said, it goes back to the thing I'm saying about Tavernier and Goldson and Raskin and whoever else, because nobody's really played well except for Butland. Is that to do with the formation, the setup, the style? Is that all purely on that, or is it on them just not being good enough? when the new manager comes in, we'll find out, because he'll change that philosophy. He'll change the type of football. He'll change the setup. He'll change the structure. So everything's going to be new. And if these players can't hack it, then we'll have that answer.
Yeah, it's a fascinating set of circumstances, and there's going to be so much for us to get our teeth into.
So many questions, isn't there?
So many questions.
Normally, you know, it's maybe one or two, or he needs to fix this to get it upside. But there's an argument that he needs to fix this whole team, individually and collectively. So in order to do that, Jonny, that's the biggest and the most intriguing thing.
Yeah. The thing is if they're not good enough to play in training, then they won't play, of course. But it's very, very difficult for a club like Rangers just to write off an £8 million investment in two players and just say, oh yeah, 2.5 months ago we got it wrong. That's huge money. We said at the time, Stevie, you were very insistent about it. Michael Beale will be judged not by Kieran Dowell or Dujon Sterling, or I think you even said Jack Butland, and you were right, because fundamentally these were guys that could be brought in and shipped out if need be. They weren't bought in for transfer fees. It was always going to be Dessers, Danilo and Lammers, and to a lesser extent, but probably given his wages, Cifuentes as well, that were going to be the ones that people would be making their judgments on Michael Beale. And we've seen ultimately how that panned out, and I think that speaks to the lack of synchronicity that has been shown between the team and these players, and the lack of quality shown while these players have been in the team and in the short spell that we've seen them. But we also have to be cognizant of the fact it's the 17th of October, and I know everyone's angry and frustrated, but it's early in the season to be making full judgments on players. I don't feel comfortable saying I know if Danilo will be a success or not. I've just not seen enough of him. I thought he looked, good in little patches, but what does that tell us? Really, it doesn't really tell us an awful lot. So until you see these,
I agree with you, and what I would say as well on that is that I very famously said that on paper this was a 9 out of 10 summer. And I still think that the players we bought for the positions we bought made perfect sense. And then I've seen what we tried to do with them. And I spoke about it even early doors. If you want to use Sam Lammers, you need to play him with a quick tempo and play him off people. Didn't use him like that. If you play Dessers and you play him as a pressing forward, like look at him at St Mirren trying to close down, and look at how far back he was when he got that opportunity thing. He just doesn't have the capability of doing it. He's not that type of player. Cifuentes, we were told he was this box-to-box energy player we were really excited about, could take shots. I don't think I've seen Cifuentes take a shot yet. I've seen him play as a defensive right-sided midfielder. These are not positions, Jonny, that we were made out that we were getting players for. Sterling, backup Tavernier, we're not seeing anything of. Balogun was always going to be a backup. So these guys are never really... Kieran Dowell's always been injured. Sima has been the one that's in recent weeks kind of came through and impressed. And to be fair to that lad, on first glance, I wasn't sure technically that he was good enough, but he can certainly finish. So can we utilise him just as well? These, I don't think writing off the summer signings at this moment in time helps anyone, but I can see, as I said at the very start, I can see massive problems with Dessers and Lammers, particularly. I think the others have still got enough sort of in their bank that they can do that and recover quite easily. But them two are probably the biggest issues we've got. So that's going to really decide, where we are in the summer. But look, Dessers could score 2 on Saturday. It's a long shot at this moment in time, Jonny, right? And I'm clutching. He could score 2 on Saturday and then go on a run. You know what I mean? I think it's highly unlikely because of the way that things are going. But anything can, careers at Rangers can change very quickly. Mark Hateley had a horrible first 10 months and became probably one of the best strikers and forwards that Rangers have ever had in their history. So I'm not writing off anyone yet, even if I do acknowledge it's a long, long way back for these guys before we start to consider that maybe there's something there.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fair, Stevie. And time will tell. Mark Hateley, Borna Barisic, there have been players in the history of the club that have taken time and then improved. Because listen, there was always criticism at this club. You need to be at it from the get-go, and a lot of these guys haven't. So listen, we've been on for 45 minutes now, so I'm going to let you get back to your holiday. I feel like I'm dragging you away from whatever you're doing. So let's call it a day, but it's been great to have a chat. Guys, if you want to support what we do, the website is the way to do that. And we've now got a fantastic app. So if you sign up at the website, I think at the moment it's £4 for 4 months. And after that it goes to £2.99, or you can sign up for a year, I think, for £18. You get login details, you can use the website, you can use the app. There's daily high quality Rangers content, and it supports us to come on and do these videos, basically. So yeah, if you want to do that, it's there to do. We've also got the YouTube channel, which has got a member section where you can get these videos when they're not live without adverts, and there's some extra videos on there, 3 extra videos a week. So that's another way you can support us too. Listen, I'm going to stop the advertising now, though. Call it a day. Thank you all very much for joining us. Over 1,000 on today, which is absolutely tremendous. Stevie, thank you very much for coming and joining me on your holidays. It's very, very much appreciated. We've got Derek on holiday as well, and Josh is doing various things today. So it's been brilliant to have you on, and great to chat, mate.
Yeah, no, listen, thanks very much. Appreciate everybody coming on and listening, because it's really difficult, Jonny, when you're doing this and you've got to answer these questions, because the questions aren't easy. Like, what do you do with this squad? What does you manage? It's so much, and I'm mindful of being too harsh. I've been too harsh in the past, and let's see how it works. I'm a wee bit more grounded. You said something earlier. I'm a wee bit more grounded about this turn now than, I think everybody was excited about Gio. Everybody was excited about Beale. Maybe less so than Gio, but I particularly was. So I'm not saying I'm not going to back this guy and I'm not excited, but I think I'm just a wee bit more grounded. Let's see. This is a big job for him. No, it requires patience from us. No kind of decisions can be made. So I appreciate everyone that's listened, and as we try to make sense of it, Jonny, because it is a conundrum, absolutely. So let's see what the press conference brings today, and thanks everybody for kind of listening to us chatting.
Yeah, a calm, balanced Stevie Clifford. He's almost Zen, folks. That's what we want. That's what we want. A Zen Stevie Clifford. Right, okay, yeah, we're going to call it a day. We've ended this podcast about 3 times. Thanks for joining us. Cheers.